almost at January 1st. It's almost a happy new year, guys. So they are, and it seems as though the WNBPA is willing to start a strike before the deadline even shows up. This is crazy work. Sensing the deadline and the season starts, players believe time is no longer on their side. And as revenues and visibility grow, many feel the league's compensation structure has failed to keep pace with its rising commercial value.
98%. Let that number sink in for a second. When 98% of WNBA players vote to authorize a strike, you're not looking at some fringe group making noise. You're looking at near total unity in a league that's been anything but unified this past year. And that deadline they're staring down, January 9th. We're talking days away from a potential work stoppage that could derail the most anticipated WNBA season in history.
Now we know that they got those votes and all of that, but the thing is, negotiations have not progressed, guys. And this is the second extension that we've signed, that has been signed, and still nothing. Expansion draft hasn't happened. We're pushing over into the free agency period and all of that's good stuff.
Here's the reality check nobody wants to hear. The WNBA Players Association just drew a line in the sand, and they're daring the league to cross it. This isn't posturing anymore. This isn't leverage building. When you get 93% participation in a vote, with 98% of those voters saying yes to strike authorization, you've moved past negotiation tactics into genuine crisis territory. The collective bargaining agreement expires after the 2025 season, but players are making it clear they're willing to blow up the entire upcoming season if they don't get what they're demanding.
Man, these players are definitely trying to push this thing as far as they can right now. Breanna Stewart was quoted as saying, what we're doing right now isn't really working. If they're not going to budge, we're going to get to this point where we're just going to be at a standoff. If we're not going to be valued the way that we know we should be, then we're just not going to do something that doesn't make sense for us. So, damn, man, this is nasty, man. This is nasty. From attendance.
Breanna Stewart's quote tells you everything about where players' heads are at right now. What we're doing right now isn't really working. If they're not going to budge, we're going to get to this point where we're just going to be at a standoff. That's not the language of someone who's optimistic about compromise. That's someone who's already mentally prepared for a work stoppage. And when one of the league's biggest stars is publicly talking about standoffs, you know the private conversations have gone completely off the rails. The players' argument isn't complicated. They're looking at record attendance numbers, broadcast deals that are exponentially larger than previous contracts, and a media footprint that's grown faster in 1 year than the previous decade combined. They're seeing sold-out arenas for Caitlin Clark games, merchandise flying off shelves, and corporate sponsors lining up to attach their brands to the WNBA. And then they're looking at their paychecks and asking a pretty reasonable question: where's our cut?
Guarantees now, future promises may fail to translate into meaningful financial gain. With the season typically beginning around May, both sides face mounting pressure. A prolonged dispute risk overshadowing momentum the league has worked hard to build. For now, the strike authorization stands as a warning shot. If no deal is reached by January 9th, the WNBPA has made it clear it is prepared to escalate. And so they're ready to go on strike. And this sucks for us because at the end of the day, we really just wanted to watch Caitlin Clark.
But here's where it gets complicated. The WNBA's counterargument isn't just corporate stonewalling. League officials are pointing to something they call an uncapped revenue-sharing model that would directly tie future salary growth to rising league revenues over time. On paper, that sounds reasonable. You want more money? Help us grow the pie, and you'll automatically get a bigger slice. The problem is, players don't trust promises about future earnings. They want guaranteed money now, while the league is experiencing unprecedented growth. Think about the position players are in right now. They just delivered the most watched WNBA season ever. They generated more media coverage, more social media engagement, and more mainstream cultural relevance than the league has seen in its entire 28-year history. And the league is essentially telling them, great job. Now trust us to pay you fairly in the future based on a revenue-sharing formula we control. You can see why that's not landing well.
Well, this season, none of the other players have come out and said such thing. None of the other players have come out and said such thing. And, it really just seems like she's on that island alone at this point. It says Clark wants to ensure the two sides agree on a good deal to properly set up the future of the league. She said it's not something that can be messed up. We're going to fight for everything that we deserve, but at the same time, like, we need to play basketball. That's what all our fans crave. That's what all of you in the media crave as well. You want the product on the floor. At the end of the day,
Now, here's the part that makes this situation even messier. While all this is happening, you've got WNBA Players Association board members signing lucrative deals with competing leagues. Unrivaled is about to launch with significantly higher salaries for a select group of players. Project B is being positioned as an alternative professional opportunity. So, you've got union leadership negotiating for better WNBA compensation while simultaneously building exit ramps out of the WNBA. That's not exactly a unified message, and the league knows it. They're looking at these side ventures and thinking, you're threatening to strike our league while actively promoting alternatives to our league. It's creating a trust deficit on both sides. Players think the league is hiding money and refusing to share profits fairly. The league thinks players are using strike threats as leverage while already planning their departure to other opportunities.
Unrivaled and all of these other things. And we have not heard anybody but Caitlin Clark come out and say, hey, we need to sit down and we need to come to some sort of compromise. And that needs to be a major part of things, compromising so we can get a deal done and play basketball this season. Here it says it's a business and it's a negotiation. Clark said there has to be compromise on both sides. We're starting to get down to the wire of it. Obviously, I want to help any way I can, and I've tried to educate myself the best I can. I can't speak to every single number. It's pretty complicated, but I think there are different things we can.
Which brings us to the most important voice in this entire debate. Caitlin Clark is the only player who's publicly called for compromise. Not just better pay, not just player demands, actual compromise on both sides. She said it explicitly. There has to be compromise on both sides. We're starting to get down to the wire of it. I think there are different things we can find ways to say we certainly deserve that, and we can't compromise on that. And there are other things that we can probably compromise on. That statement is significant because it's the only public acknowledgement from any player that maybe, just maybe, the union's position isn't 100% reasonable on every single point. Every other player who's spoken publicly has echoed the same talking points. We deserve more. The league needs to pay up. We're not backing down. Clark is the only one saying let's find middle ground because we need to play basketball this season.
The history of the WNBA, and I don't want that to be forgotten. It's important that we find a way to play this next season. I think our fans and even everybody who has played in this league that has come before us deserves that as well. So Caitlin Clark is all in on playing basketball this season in the WNBA and finding that happy medium to get a deal done. I don't know if her colleagues, that being the players, are thinking the same.
And she's right about why that matters. Clark specifically said, this is the biggest moment in the history of the WNBA, and I don't want that to be forgotten. It's important that we find a way to play this next season. She understands something that seems to be getting lost in all the negotiation drama. The WNBA just experienced a breakthrough year. Casual sports fans who never watched women's basketball before are now invested. Corporate sponsors who ignored the league for decades are now fighting for partnership opportunities. Media outlets that barely covered the WNBA are now dedicating significant resources to year-round coverage. All of that momentum evaporates if there's no 20. You can't tell casual fans, we just hooked you on this product. Now we're taking it away for a year while we fight about money and expect them to come back when the dispute is resolved. Sports fans have short attention spans and unlimited entertainment options. A work stoppage right now would be catastrophic for long-term growth.
What you think? This Keep the Vision. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and share the channel.
But here's the brutal reality that makes this situation so difficult. The players aren't wrong about being underpaid relative to the value they're creating right now. WNBA maximum salaries are still a fraction of what male athletes in comparable positions earn. The revenue sharing percentages are significantly lower than other professional sports leagues. The travel conditions, the scheduling demands, the lack of charter flights for most teams until this past season, players have legitimate grievances about how they're being treated and compensated. At the same time, the league isn't wrong about financial sustainability concerns. The WNBA has lost money in most years of its existence. It's been subsidized by the NBA for decades. The recent growth is real, but it's also fragile and largely dependent on one player's drawing power. If Caitlin Clark gets injured or her popularity wanes, do those television ratings and attendance numbers hold? If the answer is no, then the league has a legitimate argument for caution about locking in massive guaranteed salary increases based on what might be a temporary spike. That's the fundamental tension here. Players want to be paid for the value they're creating right now in this moment of unprecedented popularity. The league wants to structure compensation around sustainable long-term growth that doesn't collapse if current trends don't continue. Both positions are reasonable. Both positions are also completely incompatible with each other.
Two things. Now, we have watched this ongoing clown show. We have watched the clown show of an off-season. That has been the off-season for the WNBA. We have seen people on the WNBPA board sign lucrative deals with Project B, co-founders of Unrivaled. I mean, it's all types of things that are going on. It's a lot of nonsense. So we got to get to this and break this article down. And this greatly.
So what happens next? We're less than 2 weeks from the January 9th deadline. The league has already granted one extension. Players have authorized strike action with near unanimous support. Negotiations have reportedly made minimal progress, despite multiple rounds of talks. And the biggest star in the league is publicly pleading for compromise, while her union leadership is preparing for a work stoppage. The most likely scenario is some kind of last-minute deal that gives both sides enough to claim victory. Players get meaningful salary increases and better revenue-sharing terms. The league gets cost controls and protections against unsustainable spending. Both sides save face, and the 2025 season happens on schedule. That's the optimistic outcome. The pessimistic outcome is that both sides have dug in too deep to back down without losing credibility. The union can't authorize a strike with 98% support and then immediately cave to league demands. The league can't spend months arguing for financial caution and then suddenly agree to massive guaranteed increases. Pride and politics might make compromise impossible even when both sides know a strike would be disastrous. And there's the Caitlin Clark factor. She's the only player calling for compromise. She's also the only player whose absence would genuinely threaten the league's viability. If there's a strike and Clark decides to sit it out rather than cross picket lines, the entire 2025 season becomes worthless even if it eventually happens. No Clark means no ratings. No ratings means no sponsor interest. No sponsor interest means no leverage for players in future negotiations. Everyone loses. Here's what makes this particularly frustrating from a fan perspective. The WNBA just had its best year ever. The product on the court was compelling. The storylines were engaging, the media coverage was extensive and mostly positive. Casual fans were converting into regular viewers. The league was finally breaking through into mainstream sports consciousness. And now all of that progress is at risk, because players and ownership can't agree on how to split revenue that didn't even exist 2 years ago. Think about how absurd that is. The league is growing faster than anyone predicted. Money is flowing in from sources that weren't even on the table during the last CBA negotiation. The entire financial picture has transformed in 12 months. And instead of finding a way to capitalize on that momentum together, both sides are preparing for a work stoppage that benefits absolutely nobody. The Players Association statement after the strike authorization vote was telling, "The players have spoken through a decisive vote with historic participation. Our membership has authorized the WNBAPA's executive committee to call a strike when necessary." That phrase, "when necessary," is doing a lot of work. It suggests the union leadership still sees the strike threat as leverage rather than an inevitable outcome. They're hoping the league blinks first. But the league has its own leverage. They know a strike hurts players more than ownership in the short term. WNBA players don't have the financial cushion that NBA or NFL players have. Most of them can't afford to miss paychecks for an extended period. The league can wait out a work stoppage longer than the players can. That's just economic reality. So if this turns into a war of attrition, the league probably wins even if everyone loses in the long run. What's most disappointing is that this was completely avoidable. The The league's growth trajectory has been obvious for months. The impact of the 2024 draft class was predictable. Television networks were bidding aggressively for broadcast rights. Corporate sponsors were increasing their investments. Everyone could see this coming. And yet here we are, days away from a potential strike, because both sides spent the past year posturing instead of negotiating in good faith. Caitlin Clark's position is the only one that makes sense for the long-term health of the league. Compromise. Find middle ground. Get a deal done that gives players meaningful improvements while maintaining financial sustainability for the league. Play basketball in 2025 and capitalize on the momentum from then tutus the CBA in a few years when there's more data about whether current growth trends are sustainable. But that requires both sides to prioritize the league's long-term success over short-term wins in a negotiation. It requires union leadership to accept less than they think they deserve right now in exchange for a better deal later. It requires league ownership to spend more money than they're comfortable spending based on financial projections that might not hold. Neither side seems willing to make those concessions. So we're probably headed for some version of a crisis, either a last-minute deal that leaves both sides unsatisfied, or a work stoppage that damages the league's credibility with casual fans who just discovered women's basketball. Either way, the 2025 season is going to be overshadowed by this labor dispute, instead of focusing on the product on the court. The saddest part is that everyone involved knows this is stupid. Players know a strike hurts their earning potential and career longevity. League officials know a work stoppage destroys years of momentum building. Fans know they're about to lose access to a product they just started caring about. Everyone can see the cliff ahead. And everyone is still driving toward it because neither side wants to be the first to hit the brake. So here's the question you need to answer in the comments. Who's more at fault here? Are the players being unreasonable by demanding guaranteed money the league might not be able to afford long-term? Or is the league being cheap by refusing to pay players fairly for the value they're creating right now? You can't say both sides are equally wrong. Pick one. Because in 10 days, one of these sides is going to have to blink first. And which side that is will determine whether we get a 2025 WNBA season or a labor dispute that sets the league back a decade. Let me know what you think happens next.